Last year in Geneva, on the last day of Cybos, our Chief Marketing Officer opened up Innotribe with a series we called View from the Top. And we'd like to welcome him to come back up again to give his views, not only on Cybos, but looking forward on this, our future day. So I'd like to welcome up to the stage the Chief Marketing Officer of Swift, Christian Serafidis, to give us some more views from the top.
So the more the people are interconnected, the more you do innovative collaboration, the more impactful it is for the customer experience. How does this translate for Swift and Innotribe in general? I'd like to give you two examples. The one actually related to the previous discussion here at Innotribe on cybersecurity. Think about this. Every bank are communicating to another. Everybody is interconnected. So that's a great strength because you can exchange transactions between all the banks. At the same time, there is a weakness. Imagine that there is a propagation risk of a virus or a malware. So the best way to protect the entire community is to protect yourself, obviously, but also to protect the counterparty, to detect and prevent your relationship, your counterparties, and also to share information. That's the way to together addressing this challenge. And Swift has done this, as you all know, and it was discussed in the previous debate, with a customer security program. Another great example, and that's the last one I can give because there are many more examples, is what you have heard throughout the week with GPI, the Global Payment Innovation Initiative. We really started with the pain points and the friction from the market. Clients were expecting better speed, better transparency, better traceability. And together with the banks, we co-created a new initiative built on the existing rail. We turbocharged the existing rail. We innovated together. We created a rulebook together with the banks. We invented the unique identifier and this famous tracker application. That was really great. But then, thanks to Innotribe, we said, what is the way forward? How can we really go the extra mile and add even more value to further enhance the customer experience? And we decided to run an industry challenge. We had a session this morning actually on this topic. And this is really a collaborative approach with the banks, with the fintechs, and Swift by exposing the Swift APIs where fintechs and banks together can add value, add application with the aim at enhancing the end customer value proposition.
I'm going to talk to you about calm technology. But first, who's heard this quote? This quote was thrown around for a number of years, that there are going to be so many billion devices in the world, and usually it's coded in a way that's really exciting, really positive. Because there are a lot of publicly traded companies out there, and when they saw what mobile development did to their stock prices, they said, oh wow, we have to keep doing this. We have to make sure that there are more chips in the world. So let's put chips in everything. We'll call it the Internet of Things. Everything will have a chip. Everything will be smart. And we'll have 50 billion of these devices by 2020. Everything will be great. And so whenever I see these quotes, I actually ask, does this actually sound good? Let's consider a few different things. For instance, the smart watch that automatically gives you the same alerts as are on your phone, and you have to kind of figure out what you want and what you don't want. The smart fridge. There are so many clients that try to call me up and get me to make smart fridges. And some of the things are, let's have a thumbprint reader in the fridge. So when you're making food and your hands are dirty and then you go to the fridge, you have to use your thumb. I thought that once you get into your house, everything's unlocked. You don't need another layer of security to get into all of your appliances. Or a Bluetooth connected fridge. It's like, okay, so now my phone that's connected via Bluetooth to a speaker, I have to disengage that and connect it to my fridge for what? To figure out what's in the fridge? Or a fridge that tells you that on the way home you need to pick up milk and eggs. Isn't that what most people pick up at the store every time? Do I really need a piece of technology that has $2 million in funding from San Francisco to tell me that I need to pick up milk and eggs when I go to the grocery store? Plus, when you add all of these together, you get what I like to call the dystopian kitchen of the future, in which everything's connected, but it's not connected that well. It doesn't speak to each other. It's written in different programming languages. It has its own support cycle. Half of the companies will go down, and you won't have any supportable software or hardware anymore, and most of it will be hacked at some point and take over the other appliances in your house and turn your house against you. Not to mention the bandwidth that this takes up. You're trying to watch Game of Thrones, and it says, sorry, there's not enough available bandwidth. Your fridge is trying to communicate to your stove, and it's taking up all this conversational space. Technology should inform and calm at the same time. There is an example of this through ambient awareness. So ambient awareness, you can put indicators into the environment. Like today, you all realized that there was going to be a show partially because of the ambient indicator signs, but also because of all this crazy lights show that was going on. It's kind of ambient awareness of something. You can do this in 4 different ways. You can buzz somebody versus an auditory alert. You can have a light status versus a full display. For instance, if I have a video camera, there's just a red light there. I know, and you know, that there's a recording happening. It's a very small light indicator. You could have that on a server, whether the server's down or not, whether there's fraud or not, whether there's too many accounts or not, whether the customer service is bad or not. You can make a simple indicator for any of this that anybody can see. And when you don't have it, like on Google Glass, there was no indicator of recording on Google Glass, so people assumed it was recording all the time because it was completely opaque. Part of this is making what was formerly invisible visible, which is a hard thing to do, but once you do it, everybody around you and you can understand and respond to things a lot faster. Instead of using a horrible disembodied voice that says, the toast is ready, you can just go ding. I mean, we learned this from home appliances, right? Like, those are pretty stable. We don't have home appliances conferences about the future of blockchain and home appliances. It's pretty stable. I hope we don't have to have blockchain and home appliances. Then you can have transparency through like inter-office windows, so you can see whether somebody's busy or not without intruding on their privacy. This is one of Mark Reiser's original examples. They had a lot of inter-office windows at Xerox PARC. Here's an example of weather status lighting with a Hue light bulb attached to a weather report. This was my old kitchen. So I lived in Portland, Oregon for a while, which is just rainy most of the time, and so this light bulb was blue. Almost every single day. It would tell me what the weather was going to be. And on this day, it was yellow, it was going to be sunny, and I was so excited. The idea here is mostly my co-founder and I built this to make fun of these technology advertisements of you wake up in a perfect condo with a perfect English accent so that Siri understands you the very first time you say something. Does anybody have that experience of Siri understanding you every single time you say something? It always works in ads. So with this, all you have to do is walk in and you have an understanding of what the weather is going to be like, and then you can look at the secondary interface and get a high resolution version of the information. That's all it is. It's pretty straightforward, but it does give you this kind of sense, this kind of sixth sense, taking something that was formerly invisible and making it visible. You can do the same with temperature. This is done a lot in factories. You can just change the color of something to the temperature. It'd be nice to have a shower head like this so that it's just, you could choose whatever color of red or purple you wanted, but you know just by visual indicator what temperature it is. It's nice instead of sticking your hand constantly. I work with a company that is doing industrial IoT, which I think Internet of Things really works well at the industrial level because you can stack a bunch of sensors onto things, and then you can actually use augmented reality to look at things in real time and how they're changing. And they're on a different network than the machines, so if the IoT gets hacked, it's not hacking into the machines themselves. This is an example. If you were to have a heads-up display, you could actually see a factory and see all the issues over time and not have to worry about it as much instead of going into a very specific interface constantly and trying to look at these little tiny details. And I think that's really important. This is kind of, you can have a digital twin of something, but you can also blend reality. So instead of augmented reality, you can kind of have a mixed reality. You take the data that's associated with the machine and you place it on the machine, you place it on the software, you place it on the service, you place it back onto the reality from which it came. It's a harder thing to do, but it's really interesting. This is a really important concept when people are trying to do artificial intelligence implementation. Every time somebody tries to make a computer that acts like a human, like those phone tree systems that are really annoying with the robotic voices, people end up being on pause. People end up turning into robots themselves. You have to say something like 3 or 4 times to get it across. And it turns out that these humans act like machines the whole time. So don't do that. If you amplify the best of what humans can do, which is curation, and the best of what machines can do, which is going through lots and lots of data and finding patterns and suggesting things, the human who understands context and is a human embodied in a shape with history and identity and relation and an understanding can then choose what the right thing is from the list. This is my friend Todd Huffman. He got really upset because all of these grad students in biology had to scan these tissue samples in 2 dimensions, and it just took forever, and people's arms were really tired. So he built a bot that does this tissue scanning for them in 3 dimensions with a diamond knife, and it slices and scans these tissue samples. And now the machine, through a feedback loop of doctors saying, yes, this ended up being cancer, or no, this didn't end up being cancer, is able to start predicting cancer before it shows up. This is a nice version of automation because it includes humans in the loop as a voting system. Some of the best automation or AI right now we have is about a feedback loop that has humans voting, that has tiny little micro-human input. That's how it gets to be really good and sharp, not in its own system outside of itself. It's a very industrial revolution perspective to think that you can make a machine outside of an ecosystem and it will be just fine. We don't have a world that works like that anymore. Everything is very connected, so we have to consider the ecosystem in which we put things and how those things work. Technology can communicate, but it doesn't need to speak. I hate those stupid disembodied computer voices. They're really obnoxious. What I really like is the Roomba. The Roomba robotic vacuum cleaner just goes dun 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 when it's done, and dun dun when it's stuck. And when you hear that, you're like, oh no, I have to help the Roomba. So you go find it and you pick it up. It's not trying to do everything for you. It's kind of the idea that the engineering behind it is that it's not very good at what it does, but it's kind of adorable. In fact, it doesn't actually clean any of the corners, but cats love it and they like to ride around on it in YouTube videos. But again, you don't need to translate this into a bunch of different languages because it just has a tone. And these tones of happy or sad are universal. And so when you're making something, you don't need to make this incredibly complicated situation. It's the least amount of technology to get the job done. Just finding the least amount of technology to get the job done, that's the hardest part. And that's the part that takes all of the time. And that's the part that people don't want to do. They want a really fast solution that you end up paying for millions of dollars at a time years down the road. Technology should consider social norms. Remember when the phone came out with a camera? Everybody had a cell phone, and then suddenly the camera showed up, and everybody thought privacy was dead, and this would be horrible, and we need to ban these all over the place. And now people know that when you put your phone up like this, like you can run and hide, but it's probably just a selfie, or they're taking a picture of their lunch as a pre-digestive ritual or something like that. But whatever's normal becomes invisible. We got used to it, and now every one of you in this room has a video camera in your pocket, and that's totally not a big deal, is it? Everybody has one at this point. So that's normal. Anything below that current norm, which changes all the time, is accepted. A prosthetic leg, for instance, or just a pair of eyeglasses, that's restoring you to the current norm. Right now, the current norm is to have a cell phone with a camera. In many countries, not all countries, and that's the norm. So when you're in that specific country, you are you're not doing so well if you don't have that norm. Anything above that norm is fear-inducing because not everybody has it, it's usually expensive, and it usually gives you a superpower beyond what everybody else has. So just putting a camera on your face is terrifying because people aren't used to that. And it's not that technology isn't ready for humans. Humans are usually not ready for technology. And we have to wait, and we have to say, there's kind of a metabolism rate. It's maybe about a season or 2 seasons or 3 seasons before we can get each new feature out. And so to develop something like the iPhone did take at least 10 years. First you had to have the iPod, and then you had to, you can see the progression that it took. So anytime somebody says, we'll make this new thing with all these new features, it doesn't make a lot of sense if you actually find out where the social norms are. When the elevator first came out, people were afraid to ride in it because they thought that they would die from the pressure change. Same with trains. Nobody had ever been accelerated that fast before. Oh no, you could die. I mean, people, you have to kind of work with them. They're human and they're fearful, and it takes a while. This is my friend in Google Glass, which is still creepy. The right amount of tech, yeah, we'll see how long that takes. The right amount of tech is the minimum to solve the problem. These are some of my favorite technologies. Streetlights are great. Why are they calm? Because they have a status light instead of a giant display. Can you imagine making a streetlight today? It would be like some sort of app you'd have to download to sync with the traffic, and then it would give you alerts. The light is about to turn red, and countdowns, and it would speak at you in a disembodied voice. It would be horrible. But the idea behind streetlights is that they're just punctuation. They're ambient, ambient attention modules that you just kind of glide through if it's green and you stop if it's red. It's really nice. And then the toilet occupied sign. I like to go on planes and see what doesn't change on the plane. This does not change. This indicator, even if you're red-green colorblind, it's just an icon, and it works okay. Technology should make use of the near and the far. How many of you, if you put your phone on airplane mode, can actually do anything with your phone? You could take some photos, you could take some notes. You can't really talk to that many people. A lot of the apps require a web connection. They don't have a lot of stuff stored offline. But if we have these giant computers in our pockets that are they're way better than what we had on mainframe, why aren't we doing a lot of processing on our phones? Why aren't we storing a lot of data on our phones and then sending it to an external server or database for a period of time to get something done, and then get that data stored back on our phone? Why don't we have the equivalent of personal servers? I mean, we literally have the technology in our pockets to do this. This is my prediction map of where the web might go. First, we had computing that was far away from us on mainframes, and we had many people sharing that. Then we had personal desktop. And remember when you had a personal desktop and there was no web? You could do everything there and you just needed a printer. You had CD-ROMs, or before that, floppy disks that were finished pieces of software that would come out once a year or once every 2 years that guaranteed would work. There wasn't somebody saying, oh no, here's 20 floppy disks in the mail, install one every day for your virus update, because there weren't, I mean, viruses were a completely different thing. And then we started to offload a lot of that data into remote mainframes and into the cloud. And now we're storing almost all of our stuff outside of us. The thing is, it's impossible for every single company that's a web-based company to protect all of our data, to protect our identity, to protect our privacy. In fact, wouldn't it be nice if we stored the data that was close to us with us and shared it for 4 hours or 30 minutes to get some banking done, and then it got stored back with us, so that if your banking application got hacked, it wasn't that hackers got everything, but only the stuff that was shared by people in the last 30 minutes? I mean, there's different models that we can use for this stuff. It doesn't need to be as complicated and messy as it is right now. It's just really, it takes some time. So perhaps we'll get to this point. I'd love to see that. We probably won't see it right now. Follow IPFS, Filecoin, and some of these other new things coming out of Silicon Valley. See where they go. Thought experiment. Finally, technology should work even when it fails. Assume the tech will fail. How does it perform at a bunch of different failure states? How does it perform when you have bad connectivity? How does it perform when you're out of batteries? I have a lock on my door, but it's just a key code. The battery lasts for 2 years, and when the battery is dying, for the last 40 tries that I use, it will go wee, 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 and flash everything red. And it'll do this for so long that I'll get annoyed enough and change the batteries. But at no point will I ever get locked out of my house, and it's not web connected, so nobody's going to hack it. It's just a really simple thing. There are a lot of people who try to make these phones that unlock your door with your phone. It's like, well, if I come back at 2 in the morning drunk and my phone is out of batteries, I can't get in my house just when I really need to get into my house, because they're not considering the failure state. People who assume that you can control the lights in your house through the web are probably from Silicon Valley or South Korea, where there's really good internet connection. And it's really hard, because in most places in the world, you're going to have some issues with web everywhere. Well, especially now in Silicon Valley, everybody's trying to download stuff on Netflix. So you have to question what's going to happen when something fails. And then if you process as much on the device itself, you don't have to get the user interface from the web. Your application will perform better. So if good design allows you to accomplish your goals in the least amount of moves, first you have to figure out what somebody's goals are, which is a whole another issue. Then calm technology allows you to do the same thing with the least amount of mental cost. Another quote from Mark Weiser: "A person's primary task should not be computing, but being human." That was the promise of technology, to get us back to being human again, because that's the thing we don't want to automate. That's the interesting stuff. It's not that humans are bad or good, but it would be nice to have enough free time to come up with the next thing. And finally, the scarce resource is not going to be our technology, it's our attention. And how tech makes use of our attention is the crucial thing going forward.